our financial services. I was we're looking at building a new concert hall in the city. May or may not ever happen, so I visited the French equivalent last 2 weeks ago, which was magnificent, being French. The Philharmonie de Paris. And we had a chat over dinner, quite a few of us concerned with culture, not me, I know nothing about culture. And I asked them, so what about Brexit? They said, oh, for us it's horrifying. You know, this was the London Symphony Orchestra. You know, we're playing in Paris today, London next week, Frankfurt the week afterwards. You know, our musicians come from all over Europe. That would no longer be possible, because one assumes if we leave the European Union, we would have to impose some visa requirement, which indeed Dominic Raab, one of the spokesmen, said. Same with our footballers. No more French footballers playing for Arsenal. Now, sometimes people say, well, actually, no, that'll be fine, but we'll allow all of that. Well, so what's the point, you know, of leaving? And in terms of businesses, when I've talked to people like JP Morgan, or even much smaller ones, they run a European HR program. It's not British. You know, we need somebody to head up our equities business. Oh, the best chap is the Italian who's currently in Frankfurt. Get him over next week. That wouldn't be possible. At least one assumes it wouldn't be possible. Because I don't see how we can leave the European Union and not impose some visa requirements.
Can I make a point?
Yeah.
I'm just old enough, I'm the youngest person, old enough to remember when we weren't in the EU. I'm sure you didn't need a visa to go to France. You only need a visa to go to the communist.
It's to work. It's to work, it's not to go.
Yeah.
Going's easy.
Nigel Farage is on the record saying we are not going to boot out Polish or Italian workers. We're not going to go down that business. This is not an attack on foreign workers. This is about sovereignty.
Okay.
It's about, I think, obviously if we put visa restrictions, then the other side will do the same. So there'll be, like with Canada and America in NAFTA, there'll be an understanding where there will be just passports shown on the way. I don't think there will, because it's just it'll be retaliation. So.
Well, okay, so we're not going to have a visa requirement. So we're not going to do anything about immigration, which is why most people who favour Britain leaving want to leave.
Can I be candid? They're not really worried about European workers' immigration. They're more worried about immigration from outside Europe. That's what I hear from them.
I'm well aware of that.
Yeah, so I think it's not about European workers.
But bearing in mind that it is entirely our policies that govern immigration from outside the European Union. It's not European Union.
I agree, accept your point.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that that's why their concern is. So I don't think there's going to be any pressure on a post-Brexit Britain to stop European workers.
I don't agree.
Well, speaking as someone who has to have a visa to come into this country, it's a student visa. It's costly. It's kind of an arduous process. I had to go for one appointment to get my fingerprints done. I had to go to another appointment to mail in my things. And if that was suddenly imposed on all non-British workers, I think that would be a significant imposition. For me to work here, a company has to sponsor my visa, and it costs them over £1,000 per year. So I think that it would be extremely detrimental, even if it was any type of visa or any type of regulation.
I agree with you. That's why I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, actually, we are very concerned about the current government's visa policy as it stands. Mm-hmm. When I talk to the tech firms, we do a lot with them, that's their biggest constraint. Mm-hmm. Because they're in a fast-moving industry, they want somebody from Israel or from Brazil now, mm-hmm. not in 6 months' time. Yeah. As far as universities are concerned, we have lost a lot of business from India, and we've lost a lot of goodwill because of that. The Australian universities are now picking up that business. Mm-hmm. China, we've held up reasonably. Mm-hmm. And you're quite right on, I've seen the visa application form. It was clearly designed by somebody determined to stop anybody getting into the country. Mm-hmm. You're right, I don't know where you had to go for it, but when I was talking with people in Vietnam, they had to go to Bangkok. Mm-hmm. Now, I dare say a fair number of you were not born in Britain. I wasn't. And that is why London is so great, frankly. Anybody, I make this joke about my own home of Jersey. In Jersey, if your family had been there for 300 years, you're almost local. Mm. London, about a week. Yeah. And the concerns about immigration in any polling are most strongly held in the parts of the country where there are no immigrants. Mm. So down in Cornwall, they're really concerned about it. In London, they're very relaxed.
Yeah.
And I think we've got to make that argument. You know, there are some people who come here to scrounge benefits. There are far more Brits who scrounge benefits than there are Poles.
I agree with that, but I wasn't thinking of polls, but I was talking about people coming here to be benefit service. I won't say which
Yeah, but you know, that's our benefit system that does that. It's not an EU benefit system. And although it was featured, the renegotiation has been lost. Anybody remember it? You know, it doesn't feature in the negotiation. It's really not of great significance.
Yeah, just if you were to argue that you want to leave EU, is it not a bit kind of ironic that the EU exists to foster free trade, but the majority of policies coming from Brussels, not the majority, but a lot of the bureaucracy and the reason these departments exist is to create things like regulation and government intervention. So free trade should be less government, surely.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
This is our last question, by the way.
I don't necessarily.
For example,
What?
like common agricultural policy, for
Yeah,
example.
but I agree on that. You know, that was political. That was a nonsense. You know, when I did my MA degree, we looked at it in detail. It's now of less significance. But let me give you a story which may or may not be true. It's about Douglas Hurd, who was Foreign Secretary. And he wanted to find one of these nasty EU regulations. And he discovered this one about lawnmower noises. What's the EU doing regulating lawnmower noises? Stop it! So the officials went away and came back a month or two later and said, we've looked at this, Foreign Secretary. Yeah, I'm sorry to say, actually, this is a British initiative. Why? Well, our lawnmowers make 87 decibels of noise, and the German ones make 85. And the Germans have banned all lawnmowers that make any decibel noise higher than 85. So we want to have a common rule of 87. So we are in free competition with the German lawnmower manufacturers. Now, it's probably completely untrue, but actually it is fairly typical of the sort of negotiations that I see taking place. You know, the rules are not made by Brussels bureaucrats. Every directive is agreed by national governments. Now, in some cases, it's a bit of a bargain. You know, particularly the small countries are very good at this. The Irish will say to the Germans, we don't have any of this. We'll vote for you, provided you vote for us on that. That's the horse trading that goes on. And that's why they have what they call 3 shirter sessions. They meet continuously for 36 hours and change their shirts 3 times. Okay? It's a stupid way of doing regulation. They get it wrong. And another problem, when they get it wrong, they can't correct it. Whereas, I mean, we struggled correcting it. They find it very difficult. So the European Union, a lot of the initiatives, first of all, a lot of myths. Boris tried that. European Union regulation that stops 8-year-olds blowing up balloons. No, Boris, this was Cardiff City Council. You know, it wasn't EU, that the straight bananas myth. There's a load of these myths. When I ran the trade body for labour providers, these are people bringing in Polish workers doing minimum wage work. The government asked me, and everybody else running a trade body, can we please have your gripes about European Union regulation? And I went through everything I had advised my members about for 4 years. And the complaints were all about British regulation, particularly the administration of the national minimum wage and the accession states worker registration scheme. The working time directive, which you'll hear a lot about, is completely irrelevant. It is not a problem for anybody. You have an opt-out on day 1, and even the agency workers directive we got round in about 15 minutes. So I think when people talk about regulation like that, take it with a pinch of salt. But having said that, our complaint of the European Union is that sometimes it's what we call fortress Europe. It is seeking to have controls around Europe that stop outsiders trading, and similarly, this is to do with MiFID and EMIR, which I should understand, don't, which restricts our ability to do business in, say, Brazil. And we always are wanting the liberal approach. But it's not the Commission, it is the French and the Germans, aided by the Commission.
I think we'll have to wrap up there. So if you'll join me in thanking Mr. Boleat for coming to us.
thanks for really, nice to have such an interactive audience, unlike the lawyers I spoke at last.